Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Good morning, Mechwarriors and Fellow Gamers. Welcome to Commander Hollow's Mech Bay. I'm Commander Hollow. Here we share fun, effective, and low-cost painting styles for Battletech miniatures and other games, but mostly Battletech, because that's what I like to play. Now today, we're going to talk about getting started. For a lot of people getting started with painting, some people don't really know where to start. They have trouble thinking of what they want to do, or they're not sure, how to handle the paint, just different things. And so I was asked to make some videos kind of sharing what I like to do, what my approach is to painting. And I'll be the first to tell you I'm not the best out there. There's some really amazing people, but just wanted to share my love of it and my fondness of it, and maybe someone else will find that they like it just as much. So let's push some paint around. Let's have a good time. So to start, you want to figure out what miniature you feel like painting. Some people, they may have a game in particular they want to play, or they have a color scheme from a group. They have a unit that they want to fit within their particular their forces. So today we're going to start with the Quickdraw, which is one of the units we got from the Kickstarter in the Mercenary Pack. And overall, what we're going to go for is we're going to be painting them up like these Draconis Combine first Ghost. Let's see if we can zoom in. There we go. So this is kind of the scheme we're aiming to do here. Now this is a little bit more complicated of a scheme, mostly because of the dragon decal that's going to be going around the back. Not really a decal, it's a paint job. And then wrapped around the leg. That's ultimately what we're going for. But today, since we're just talking about getting started, we're going to talk about priming. We're going to talk about different ways to create your undercoat, different approaches for highlighting, and so let's just jump into it. So you can see I've started this mini, and you've got a few others over here that I've just primed. I like to prime in batches. Just get out there, get the spray can, and spray them all down. When you're priming, it's important. You want to usually position the mini in a couple of different positions to allow the primer to get up underneath the unit itself. I got a lot of my hand in that last shot. And then you want to position them in different ways to just make sure you've got good even coverage. One of the important things is you don't want to saturate it with the paint. You don't want to just soak it down, because that'll create it'll start to layer up. You'll lose some of the definition in the unit. It'll start to fill up some of the cracks, and the cracks are part of what gives it the definition and the character for each unit. So once you've got them primed, give them some time to dry. Usually you want to give it at least an hour or two. I know some dry faster, some dry slower, depending on your humidity and the brand you're using. These were all done with Army Painter black primer. And the reason, excuse me while I take a little sip of coffee, the reason I like to use black primer is it really gets down evenly into the cracks. And that's most of what we're going to be doing with the painting, is trying to use those cracks to create more definition by varying the amount of color that goes into each area. So let's zoom out again here. My hands look gigantic in these shots. So we're going to start with a simple gray primer, or excuse me, not primer, just matte acrylic paint. And, you know, we said we like to focus on things being effective and low cost, and that's, you know, there's a lot of hobby acrylic paint out there. A lot of people who paint miniatures, they like to use Games Workshop products. And, you know, some of those are fantastic products, but they're a little on the pricey side. So, yeah, more coffee. So, you know, part of the challenge here is we're going to use some lower cost products because it's a hobby, you know, it shouldn't have to break the bank. And, you know, I'll be the first to say I'm not the greatest painter out there. You know, I do this because I like it, and I have insomnia, so sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, and I can't go back to sleep, so I like to paint. But at any rate, you know, so some other people who may, you know, they go out there, they're trying to win awards, they're trying to, you know, paint the best thing out there, and I think that's great, and I love to see it, and I find it inspirational. You know, what we're trying to do here is, you know, we want to make it look fun, make it look nice. You know, whether it's a scheme you're going after, you know, that's set up in Camo Specs Online, which is a great resource. Or if it's something, you know, unique, your own scheme you came up with. You know, the point is to have a good time, to enjoy yourself. You know, the rule of fun. So that's what we're going to be about here. And so it's okay if you want to use something that's more cost effective. I think this thing cost me maybe $2, and you will paint over 100 units and you still won't run out of it. It's as long as you store it right. You see, I barely get the lid on that thing. So we've got our gray set up here. Okay, now let's talk about prepping the paints. You can see this paint's really thick. It's viscous right now. There's no flow to it, very little flow. And if you use that, you're going to find it'll kind of glob up a little bit. It won't move very evenly. You can push it around a lot. It just takes a lot more effort. So we're going to use our handy dandy water can. You can see we've got a couple different brushes here. We have, this is basically my mixing brush, very long, flexible, lets me get in there and really push the paint around, carries a fair amount of water. And this is just a simple paint mixing tray I think I got from Michael's, like $6 for a pack of 8 or crazy amount. And they clean up really nicely. They're handy. You know, the wet palette, I've seen a lot of people like to use a wet palette, and I think that's great. But, you know, personally, I don't like to leave paint sitting out for very long. I tend to mix up just smaller batches for what I need. And this is moving around nicely. And then the other brushes we have, I have two larger fan style brushes. What we're going to be doing is dry brushing some gray onto most of the unit, and then we're going to highlight with some white after that with a very light dry brushing, focusing on the upper edges. Let's see. Yeah, so when you're prepping your paint, you want to make sure it has the right consistency. You don't want it too runny, because then it'll run down into the cracks where you don't want it to go. And you don't want it too thick, because then it's like spreading syrup, you know. It'll just be very, it tends to be globby, it doesn't dry as evenly. This is just a piece of printer paper I've got here. I think it makes for nice testing how the paint's behaving. And you know, we also have some paper towel just for absorbing moisture, and I sometimes will use that for getting excess paint off of the brush. But sometimes it'll put fibers into your brush, and then those fibers will transfer onto the unit, and you don't want that. Getting out the tweezers, digging at little fibers. That's no fun. So, okay, so once we've got the paint to the consistency we want, and I think I got pretty lucky with that first run. You know, we want it to go where we put it, and we don't want it to run anywhere else. That's the consistency you're looking for. And we're just going to dab a little bit on the end here. Just dab, dab, dab. My Bob Ross on. And then we're going to remove some excess because we don't want it to be too heavy when we put it on. And the goal, we're going to lay this down to create some contrast between the larger flat surfaces that are on top and the darker shadows within the cracks. And you can see right away, you know, you start putting this on, it immediately starts showing you the contrast between the flat surfaces and the shadows. You know, that's a big part of what we do with this in the hobby is you're taking this tiny piece of plastic and you want to make it kind of stand out, make it seem like what you're viewing, at least with Battletech, what you're viewing is a giant, big stompy robot. But you're viewing it from farther away, you know, almost from a bird's eye view or from up above. You know, so part of it is trying to pick up those little subtleties in the unit, the greebles, and highlight that to create that illusion. Here I am painting way off camera. See if we can fix that. It's a little bit of a challenge. And normally you just hold it where you can. Let's see the difference here. Looks like we got a bit of the helmet to do. See, that arm just pops. And you know, you want to be gentle. You don't want to force it in there because then the bristles will go right into the cracks and kind of defeats the purpose. You know, you can go back, and we'll probably go back and do some shadowing on this later on. Do that in a later video. You just kind of gently powder it on there. And since we're doing the gray coat underneath, just want to get it evenly on the unit. Down there. Get the under chassis. You know, just in case when your mech gets headshot from a Gauss rifle and you gotta lay it down. You know, everyone will say, oh, hey, look at that. You even got the under chassis. How nice. Okay. All right, and you can already see he's getting some definition there. You know, look at that. Okay. Now, since I feel like we've got a good amount of this on him, let's do a quick, you know what? We're going to do a little more here on the side. See, look at that difference. That leg versus this leg. Yeah, we're going to do a little more on the left leg here. Really want those joints to pop. Maybe a little more on the front. Yeah, this whole left leg just needs a little bit more love. Okay. Okay, now now that we're putting all this gray on here and you're seeing more details, you might be able to spot some mold lines. And a lot of the more advanced players, or painters, they will, tell you about the mold lines and how to remove them, the importance of removing them. It does give the unit a cleaner look if you take time to clean off all the mold lines. For the purposes for what we're doing here, and for how I usually paint, we're not going to worry about that right now. That's more, again, I'm not knocking it. I think that it definitely gives a cleaner look to the unit if you remove all the mold lines. But generally, if you're looking hard enough at my dudes to see if you can spot some mold lines, I've already caught your attention with the paint job. You're just looking for something to pick apart. Most mold lines will not be super noticeable with a good paint job. To a keen eye, and if you're doing photos and getting zoomed in on them, sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's, you're going to spot them. But there's the 2-foot rule, where if it looks good enough at 2 feet, then you've done a nice paint job. I like that. It's got kind of a Bob Ross vibe to it, So, okay, so having used all the gray that I wanted to use on this, I've, rinsed off the brush. It's important not to do that until you're ready. Now we're going to do, and since we're only putting a little bit on, it dries pretty quickly. And, the gray and the white, we do want to blend and mix a little bit. So we're going to go right ahead and do the white highlighting now. And this is, let's see, this is Folk Art Matte. That first one was Craftsman Dark Gray, which really doesn't seem that dark to me, but hey, that's okay. I've used Craftsman on a lot of units. I like it. I think it's a good brand. It's very consistent. You sometimes, depending on the undercolor and the upper color, you might have to do maybe 2 coats, depending on what you're trying to do. But it's a good product. Folk Art is another one that I'm kind of new to, but I like it. It comes out very thick. And I like that because it, since I'm going to dilute down to, the type of paint that I want, having it thick like that means I'm getting a fair amount. Again, we're just going to add a little water in there, a little bit at a time. There we go. Give that a good mix and see how she's looking after a while. But yeah, you'll see as we get into other topics like cockpits and weapons. I'm a big fan of taking advantage of different types of paints with different effects. There's some really, really fun stuff out there. It gives the mecha kind of a dynamic feel to it. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Now, let's see how this is behaving. Ooh. Bumping the table. I think my brush is a little wet. Let's dry that off. All right, this is, it's a little wetter than I like. Bummer, I think I put too much in there with, Okay, that's okay. We'll just add a little more. Okay, now you can see this. You can end up making very large batches, and we aren't going to use that much of this. So I prefer, when I have the chance, and we'll do some of this probably in the next video, we're going to be doing some batch painting. Look, you could paint up, multiple units at once. Once you get down to your technique. All right, so that's better, yeah. You can see maybe a little thick in some places still. Let's mix it up good. But yeah, you can see it doesn't want to sit in large globs. It's trying to even out. Yeah, it's a little thick again. All right. Now for this, we're going to use the bigger fan brush because we're really only trying to put a little bit of the white on the edges. So, and this is to create an edge highlighting appearance for the undercoat. So when you apply your base coat, your theme coat that you're going to do, it will have a greater effect. It will highlight the edges so that those will pop, will give your unit more definition. Some people, they don't like to do the white dry brush approach. They prefer a white zenithal or zenithal, which is just taking white spray paint and from the top, just a quick spray to give it that definition. And it looks nice, it definitely will highlight, create an appearance. All right, let's zoom in again. And let's try to keep my hand out of it. And so you see what we're doing here is just picking up the edges and really making that contrast between the crevices in the unit versus here we go. And you can really see it makes things pop. Really contrast those shadows. Makes it look like that armor paneling is thick. It's going to take a lot of shots to take down my dude. And then they get boxcar. They roll double sixes, get a headshot. See, and just a little bit of this paint goes a long way. There's the back. See, not much definition. Lots of definition. Do a little more here. That cockpit difference. There we go. Yeah. And it creates that sense of shadows that you would see. So you can see I'm only brushing down because light creates highlights, and light usually when you're on a battlefield is coming from above. There's situations where you could be underlit or have an explosion, which is lighting up your chest, and some people paint those techniques. I think there's pretty cool stuff out there. So you want to do your best to, add the light where you want the light to be on the unit. If you want it to be more shaded, more shadowed, you don't put so much on it. If you have a strong sense of the edge, you really go to town. And you know, right now, don't worry if you're hitting the base. That's fine. That base is there. It's going to be getting some other paint on it. You don't even worry about it. So yeah, so already you can, and let's compare it to, we got a Panther here. You can already see the difference in the contrast. It's perceived. I mean, the Panther, you can see the cracks, but it's not as pronounced. The Quickdraw, you know, he's ready to go. He's looking sharp. So yeah, so that's just getting started. It's 3 brushes and maybe $4 worth of paint. Let's zoom out again here. You know, and an old coffee can full of water. In fact, when I started, I didn't even have nice little receptacles for my paint. I used a paper plate. just put the stuff right on it and went to town that way. You know, so, and anyways, you know, I hope you've enjoyed this. And, you know, check out some of our other videos. And happy painting.